Hello everyone, it is me, Trent. I thought I would go ahead and open up this episode of me reading my book with a little talking point, because I don't want to sound like a robot when I'm reading my stories. I want people to think I'm a person. Which is funny though that if I do sound robotic, because there is a crazy ass robot in this book later on, so I think that'd be very on character. But let's just go ahead and get right into it. Okay. If you've been following along, you already know what happened last time, but basically last time the prison purge had just started. Okay, chapter 10, Free. Dina bolted out of bed the moment the door to her cell within the box opened. Confused but excited, she quickly ran out of her cell to see what was going on. Was it a wiring malfunction? She looked up and down the hall and saw every single door was open. Everyone was peeking their heads out, but some were still asleep. Not even thinking twice about Hartman, she ran down the hall, joining a handful of others as well. Some did a double take at Dina's face, and all she wanted to do was slap them for having such disrespect. Dina decided she would get Hartman later. She had to have the perfect revenge plan. She was filled with adrenaline as she pushed through the other prisoners, so much so that she barely noticed the pain in her back. She laughed and screamed in joy as she exited the box and re-entered the main prison. Some of these chapters are short. Chapter 11, Chaos Commence. Before anyone could really register what was happening, Rush's posse had taken most of the weapons littered throughout the prison. One unfortunate soul made the mistake of attempting to take a bat from Jimenez, another minion of Rush's, and he was decked in the face with it, breaking his nose. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Johnny Middleton asked. Rush turned to him and smirked. "Exercising our God-given right, isn't that right, Charlie?" Rush asked, grinning. Charlie stood next to Rush and replied, "Indeed it is." The first of many fights broke out in the middle of what prisoners called the pit, which was essentially the common area with cafeteria tables and such. Johnny Middleton was hit in the jaw with a baseball bat by Jimenez, who was subsequently smacked in the back of the head by another member of Rush's posse. Teddy remembered the crawl space that Charlie had unknowingly led him to. Teddy considered heading there, but thought better of it. If Charlie was in good with Rush's gang, he may lead them into that crawl space for protection, and Teddy didn't want to be caught in the crossfire. Instead, he stayed in his bunk. It would do him absolutely no good to search for weapons at a time like this when everyone was fighting. The sudden surge of people from the box made the women's side of the prison an absolute mess. Of course, there were people fighting for weapons in their own version of the pit, but Skinner was above all of that. She would let them fight, let them get out all of their energy. Skinner had reunited with Hartman after she had escaped the box, and she had also gotten Eve Robertson as well. "What's the plan, boss?" Hartman asked Skinner, grinning. Hartman looked at Eve and looked disgusted. "Who the hell is this bitch?" she asked. Eve glared at Hartman and said, "This bitch is me. Got a problem with that?" Skinner stopped both girls before any fights could break out. "Robertson, Hartman, I need you two to look for the other girls. We need to stick together and hang tight. These first few hours are going to be an absolute bloodbath," Skinner said. Both girls obliged and went off in their separate directions. Deidre held the door open as Augusta and Georgina climbed down into the crawl space. None of the girls knew where Sherry was, and unfortunately they'd never see her again. She was in the pit, and she had attempted to get a weapon when she was knocked over and trampled to death. Sherry had been given the death sentence by her own fellow prisoners. Sick irony, isn't it? The crawl space was dark and damp. Deidre had shut the door and volunteered to stay above. Both girls heard the shelf slide over the hatch. "I don't like this. I'm claustrophobic," Augusta said. Georgina rolled her eyes in the dark. "So you wait until now to say something?" she asked. It was absolute madness on both sides of the prison. Even Blakey, who had been one of Rush's men, was tackled and crushed underneath everyone else. He died an agonizingly painful death, and Rush watched and didn't give a fuck. Nestor saw it too, and he smirked, yet again feeling that tingly sensation. He couldn't wait to get his first kill. It would feel almost orgasmic. He began to lightly touch himself, but stopped before anybody noticed. He would masturbate about it later, but first he needed to get some good material to jerk off to. Nestor saw someone on the ground, and Nestor lifted his foot and stomped the guy's head in until his head was nothing more than a bloody pulp. That would do the trick. Nestor's attention was quickly diverted away by Rush, who grabbed his hand and began to pull him out of the pit. "There's someone we need to pay a visit to," Rush said. Nestor grinned. It wasn't long before the smoke cleared, and the effects of the riot were prevalent to all. Many were injured, and even a few were dead. Deidre caught sight of Jimmy Ramos sobbing over Elizabeth Davis's body. She was hardly recognizable. Deidre felt sick. That could have been me, she thought to herself. Skinner and her gang were out of her way, and that was all that mattered in that moment. She was going to try and sneak into the guard's office. Surely, since everyone was gone, they'd be a lot more lenient with unlocked doors. Deidre quietly turned the knob to the guard room. It opened, and Deidre grinned in silent victory. Before anyone could see her, she got into the room and shut the door behind her, locking it. Then she got underneath the desk and closed her eyes. Augusta and Georgina were safe, and now she was safe here. Chapter 12. Officer left behind. Tears ran down Theo's face as Rush came into his cell, grinning and holding a baseball bat. Now, Theo, don't cry, Rush said in a mock, comforting voice. Does the baby need his bottle? Nestor spat, grinning. Fuck you, Theo screamed right before Rush knocked him in the face with a bat. You need to watch your mouth, Rush said. Nestor kicked Theo in the back of the head, and Theo let out a sob of anguish and rage. Fuck yeah, Nestor screamed. Theo turned around to face the two, and to Theo's horror, Nestor was touching himself, looking down at Theo with a look of absolute glee on his face at his suffering. Theo then decided to strike. Even if it killed him, he refused to die like this at the hands of these maniacs. Theo looked and saw the bed frame. Using the last of his strength, he grabbed the bed's leg and pulled with all of his might, causing the bed to eventually tip over onto Rush and Nestor. The two were temporarily down, but not for long. Theo bolted out of his cell, grabbing the baseball bat Rush had been carrying on his way. Fulton O'Neill hadn't put up with such foolishness, and when he saw Theo bolt from his cell, he ignored it. He didn't care for the theatrics and bullshit that these wild animals were pulling. Felton wanted peace, and he sure as hell wouldn't be getting it in here. He headed straight for the library, where he was certain none of the prisoners would be at. The library's collection was scarce, but any kind of reading material was fine by O'Neill. However, he always preferred religious texts that had gathered dust for decades. Everyone found them boring, but O'Neill loved them. Everyone else was reading the Playboys and action novels. When O'Neill entered the library, he was met with a surprising sight. None other but an officer tied to a chair with duct tape over her mouth. She had been left here for what reasons, O'Neill had absolutely no clue. Before anyone could see, he ran to the door and shut it quietly and locked it. Chapter 13, B Block. Hartman and Robertson returned with many other girls who were religious followers of Skinner. They looked at her, anticipating to go on their next move. Skinner adored it. For once, she was in control, a dominating force inside these walls. Okay, ladies, I have an idea, and I'm going to keep it short and simple. We negotiate with the other prisoners and tell them that if they decide to join our gang, then we'll protect them, Skinner said. Robertson looked at Skinner like she was crazy, which she decided to ignore. Trust me, it's just a part of my plan, Skinner continued. Most of the girls seemed convinced, and that was all that mattered to her in that moment. She needed to have most of the girls under her thumb if she wanted to survive the week-long struggle that lay ahead. Charlie grinned as he observed. That's what he did best. Observed what people were doing, what made them tick inside. It was his divine right, goddammit, and he was acting on it. He stared at Rush and Nestor. Nestor had a look of rage in his eyes. They had attacked Theo, which intrigued Charlie. Why did they attack him? Wasn't Theo an ally of Rush's? The fuck you grinning about? Nestor spat. Charlie continued grinning. Ignore him, Rush demanded, and Nestor obliged. So what's the plan? Nestor asked. Rush smiled and said, for now, we lay back. We have our gang, and if anyone messes with us, they're dead meat. The pit was now littered with bodies, especially on the male side. Broken shards of wood covered in blood were scattered all over the floor, and the caved-in skulls of the prisoners intrigued Charlie. He decided he'd go have a little look-see. It was his divine right, after all. Theo was hiding in the bathroom. Sure, it was a weak hiding place, but it would have to work for now. He was crying and was trying not to make any noise. It was everyone for themselves right now. He wanted Rush dead, along with Nestor and Holt, for contributing to the holy trinity that was his army. He freaked when he heard the door open. He grabbed his bat, prepared to swing it into somebody's face if they tried absolutely anything. Hello, a voice Theo recognized asked. Teddy? Theo whispered. He opened the door and greeted Teddy. Are you okay? I saw Rush and Nestor attack you, Teddy said. Theo nodded before saying, I stole this bat from him. Teddy grinned before asking, how the hell are we going to survive this, Theo? Theo shrugged and said, Rush is going to ensure that he and his posse survive. It's survival of the fittest in here for now. Yet again, the crawl space hidden in the janitor's closet popped into Teddy Bear's mind. It was risky, but maybe they could go through and escape the dangers that resided within this side of the prison. Look, a couple nights ago, I followed Charlie to the janitor's closet, and he led me to the secret crawl space, Teddy whispered. Theo's eyes lit up with excitement. Maybe we can escape, he proposed. Teddy shook his head. I highly doubt it. It's very risky, too, because Charlie has absolutely no idea that I followed him to that crawl space, he said before continuing. And if he's in good with rushing them, he may lead them right to it. Do you think that crawl space connects both sides of the prison? Theo asked, and Teddy shrugged. If it does, the ladies are in serious trouble. Rush will want to go over there and gain control of their turf as well, Theo said. For now, let's lay low. It'll do us no good to attract the attention of anyone bad, Teddy said. Theo couldn't agree more. Johnny Middleton was coughing up blood and staring up with wild eyes at Charlie, who was giggling as he poked at the dead bodies. Johnny's jaw was broken and it hurt like hell, all thanks to that asshole Jimenez. There was no way he'd be able to survive a week like this. Jimenez and Barr had managed to rejoin Rush and Nestor. Holt was nowhere to be found, and it didn't surprise any of them. Holt was smart, and surely he would figure out a way around this entire situation. My head hurts, Jimenez said, rubbing the back of his head. It'll hurt worse if you don't quit that yapping, Nestor said. Rush was scaling out the area for a place to rest. We need a home base where our gang can rest, Rush said. How about B-Block? It's pretty far away from the rest of the prison, and if anyone's in there, we'll kill him, Bernardo Barr proposed. Nestor loved the idea, especially the killing part. Sounds good, Rush said, smiling. The unfortunate souls on B-Block met a horrific end by Rush's crew, but especially Nestor. Nestor felt himself grow horny as he slammed a pipe into a man's trachea, smashing it. His gasping breaths were music to Nestor's ears. The guy was a child molester anyways. No one would really miss him. After everyone in B-Block was dead, Rush tasked Jimenez and Barr with removing the bodies to another area not in the block. B-Block was all theirs now. Chapter 14, Scarecrow. Every time Augusta said that she was scared, Georgina wanted to slap her across the face. Georgina was scared too, but for different reasons. She was afraid of dying. Come on, Augusta, let's try and look for an escape, Georgina said. Augusta liked this idea. If we find one, I won't have to hear you bitch about your claustrophobia, Georgina snapped, and Augusta flipped her off in return. Then the ladies were off on their search. Dina was in the ladies' bathroom, hiding in a stall and smoking her hidden stash of cigarettes. And damn, did she need one. Her adrenaline had worn off, and that nagging fucking pain in her back had returned, now amplified from the running she had done whilst escaping the box. She hadn't come up with any kind of idea to kill Hartman, and when she heard footsteps come into the bathroom, she realized she didn't need one. Hartman was right there in the room with her. After being next to her in the box for so long, she had memorized the sound of that bitch's footsteps. Dina quickly threw her cigarette in the toilet, causing it to make a slight psh sound as it was extinguished. Hello? Hartman asked aloud, and Dina cringed. That grating fucking voice. All because of a cafeteria table? What the fuck was so special about that Skinner bitch? Dina looked around. There had to be something she could defend herself with. She looked down and quickly grabbed the toilet lid. This should do, Dina thought to herself. She swung the bathroom stall door open and stared Hartman directly in the face. Hartman smirked. Oh, just you, she said. Before Dina even registered what Hartman had said, she slammed the toilet lid across Hartman's face. She let out a cry of surprise and fell to the bathroom floor. Shards of broken glass cut Dina's hands, but she didn't care. She grabbed one of the broken pieces and began dragging it down Hartman's face. She screamed like a little bitch, and it made Dina ravenous for blood. Dina then dragged Hartman's face across the glass shards, causing her screams to get louder. When Dina got a look at Hartman's face, she was shocked at how little damage she had done. Just a few minor cuts. She had to do something drastic. That's when she smashed the mirror and carved Hartman's face clean off. She screamed and cried, and it liberated Dina. How's it feel, you fucking bitch? Dina screamed. Hartman died a few minutes later, and Dina decided she didn't want to live anymore either. There was little to no chance she would survive anyway, so what was the point? Her thought process was interrupted when Jimmy Ramos came into the bathroom and screamed at the sight. Shut the fuck up, Dina snapped. Ramos jumped back. Look, I'm not going to snitch. I don't know what to do, she said. Dina rolled her eyes. Just kill yourself. That's what I'm about to do, Dina said. Ramos glanced at the bloody glass shards covering the floor. Ramus looked down at Hartman's body and grinned. Good on you for killing that cunt. She killed my best friend, Ramus said, tears building in her eyes. She died in that riot in the pit an hour ago, Ramus sobbed. Then something in Dina's head clicked. Skinner was the head of the snake. Skinner was the reason Dina's face had been half-skinned. Skinner was the reason for most of the troubles going on. As awful as Hartman had been, she was only the messenger to the Scarecrow. This chapter isn't over yet, but we're almost out of time, so I will resume reading in part 4.